Yeah, you heard me. Let's talk about Fry's dead dog. I don't think there is a single episode of Futurama that is more talked about than Jurassic Bark. Many consider it the best the show has to offer. Many others refuse to watch it due to the sheer emotional devastation. And those people are cowards. A few people, such as myself, sit somewhere in between. Jurassic Bark for a very long time was my favorite episode of Futurama. The impact of that emotional ending cannot be understated. And while I still love the episode a lot, over the years my opinion on it has definitely changed. And I know I've talked a bit about Jurassic Bark in this video, I've given my opinions on it a bit more in this video, oh yeah, and I guess also in this video, but I think I've held off long enough. This episode deserves its own breakdown, even if I've talked about it before.
Interesting. No, wait, the other thing. Tedious.
And hey, if you like this video, remember to check out the rest of my Futurama videos, subscribe, and stay tuned, because next year, somehow, we're going to be talking about brand new episodes of Futurama as they air on Hulu. What a time to be alive. Alright, so Jurassic Bark. This episode is a sort of spiritual successor to the perfect episode Luck of the Fryrish, and the second in a series of episodes that focus on flashbacks to Fry's life before he was frozen. It's followed up by Cold Warriors and then Game of Tones. I'll get it out of the way. This is a great episode of Futurama. Not only is it incredibly funny, but it is obviously the most emotionally affecting of any episode of the entire show, which is saying a lot given that the series has some doozies. The episode opens with Fry acting as Bender's assistant for his magic act, which most importantly establishes Fry's love and adoration for Bender, even when Bender takes him for granted.
That's why they call you Bender the Magnificent.
No, it isn't.
But soon they end up checking out a new exhibit at the museum showcasing a perfectly preserved pizzeria from the 20th century, and as it turns out, it's Panucci's. And while there, Fry discovers the fossilized remains of his old dog, Seymour. This introduces the flashback sequences where we see how Fry met Seymour and how quickly he became a huge part of his life. And in a pretty cruel twist of fate, the thing that brought Fry to Seymour is actually the exact thing that took him away from Seymour as well. A crank call, a fake delivery order for Seymour asses, which is of course how Seymour got his name.
I hope that in time you'll realize what an idiot you've been.
I wouldn't count on that.
And obviously Fry was right. He didn't learn his lesson, and the crank icy wiener delivery from Nibbler would later bring him to the cryogenic lab where he'd be frozen. But Fry and Seymour pretty instantly bond, and Seymour follows Fry back to Panucci's. And soon, these flashbacks start to show just how big of a part of Fry's life Seymour actually was. Obviously they had their own connection.
I'm walking on sunshine. Oh, oh,
But equally importantly, Seymour was integrated into every other part of Fry's life. He was loved by Mr. Panucci and welcomed at the pizzeria, even when he got fur on the pizzas. Fry's family loved and accepted Seymour too. And meanwhile, back in the future, we see the lengths that Fry will go to get Seymour's remains back from the museum, staging protests and eventually succeeding. When the professor reveals that he can clone Seymour and bring him back complete with his old memories, Fry starts to make preparations to get his best friend back, which makes Bender incredibly jealous.
in your face, Grim Reaper!
Crappy, ineffective Reaper.
And as Fry prepares to get Seymour back in his life, Bender becomes increasingly jealous, going to silly lengths to try and win Fry back over, and even further lengths to try and make Fry jealous in return. Like when he shows up with his own robo-puppy.
Of course, after he goes, you have to refill the canister.
So previously in my Fox retrospective video and my every episode ranked video, I was a little more critical of this episode than a lot of people are. When you compare it to its closest analog, The Luck of the Fryrish, I think it's clear that everything comes together in that episode much more cohesively than in this episode. The reveal at the end of Luck of the Fryrish recontextualizes all of the backstory with Fry's brother. It feeds off of everything we saw in the episode, and Fry changes because of it, and we, as the audience, gain a new understanding of everything that was happening. It's a seamless, perfectly written story. And I've always said that Jurassic Bark doesn't quite tie its flashback story into its future story in as effective of a way as Luck of the Fryrish. And while I still think that Luck of the Fryrish is an example of this done perfectly, on my most recent rewatch, I think that maybe I didn't give Jurassic Bark quite enough credit. Because Bender's journey of jealousy that leads to him chucking Seymour's fossilized corpse into the lava pit actually has beautiful thematic ties back to Seymour's journey in the year 2000. Both Bender and Seymour are coping with their fear of losing their best friend, Fry. Obviously, they deal with it very differently. One is a robot in the year 3000, and one is a dog in the year 2000. But they are going through the exact same thing. When Fry starts focusing his time on getting Seymour back and ignores Bender in the process, Bender fears that it will mean Fry stops spending time with him entirely. Fry blows off Bender's magic act and tells Bender to leave him alone, which to Bender means he's completely lost his friend. It's why he takes the most drastic measure and chucks Seymour into the lava.
Now I'm all you got!
And when we flash back to the day after Fry's disappearance, we see that Seymour also goes to the furthest possible lengths to try and get his best friend back. First, he tries to get the family to help find him with no success. He runs around New York, and he even manages to track his scent to the cryogenic lab. He actually finds Fry in the freezer tube. He is the only being in the year 2000 that managed to find Fry when he was missing. But even when Fry's parents come to get Seymour from the lab, through all of his crying and yelping, he cannot get them to see their son right in front of them. But Seymour and Bender were doing exactly the same thing. Everything that they knew how to try and maintain the most important friendship in their life. And there's kind of a sweet little arc in there for Fry too. He understandably was excited to get his pup back, but he also realized that he really had been neglecting his friendship with Bender. So when Bender tries to undo his own mistake by using his 40% Dolomite body to survive the lava and save Seymour's corpse, Fry immediately realizes that he now may have lost both of his best friends.
This is all my fault. I let my best friend risk his life just to get my dead dog back.
And in a beautiful full circle moment, Bender emerges with Seymour and astonishes everyone with his most magical act yet.
And that is why they call me Bender the Magnificent.
All right, here we are, the end of the episode. I know you've been dreading it, but let's talk about it. Upon realizing that Seymour actually lived 15 years, a full 12 years after being frozen, Fry decides to shut down the machine. And this honestly felt like a pretty astute observation for Fry. He realized that Seymour was with Fry for only a small fraction of his life.
I'll never forget him. But he forgot me a long, long time ago.
And then, of course, the scene that emotionally devastated every one of us. The final flashback showing that Seymour, in fact, did not forget Fry. He sat in front of Panucci's for 12 long years, waiting for Fry every single day until he laid his head down for the final time. I honestly couldn't even type that sentence without tearing up. It is, without question, one of the saddest things ever put on television. But while I did grow to appreciate this episode even more on this latest rewatch, I still think that this sequence is emotionally manipulative. I mean, yeah, maybe that's the point. But when you compare it to something like Luck of the Fryrish, which is incredibly emotional, while also adding to our characters' journeys and understanding of that situation, this does feel a little mean. Fry learning about how Yancey honored him through his son helped Fry gain a new understanding and appreciation for the lost relationship with his only brother. But at the end of Jurassic Bark, Fry makes a pretty emotionally intelligent observation about his dog's life, only for us as the audience to learn that this dog actually lived the saddest life we could have possibly imagined, something that Fry never learned for himself. And maybe there's a different lesson in there, and there is no question that is the most emotionally affecting moment in all of Futurama, but damn, does it leave me feeling unsatisfied, which I expect is why the series pretty regularly went back to the Seymour well in future entries in one way or another. Sometimes they would just tear open that wound with a joke, like in Clockwork Origin.
Uh-oh, it's another one of Fry's dogs.
You find something, Hermes?
No.
But other times, like in Bender's Big Score or Game of Tones, they tried to soothe our aching hearts by giving Fry and Seymour a happier continuation. Game of Tones took place in Fry's dreams, but he got to spend time with Seymour, and we actually got to see them be happy together again. It's undeniably satisfying to see Fry and Seymour embrace after the end of Jurassic Bark, even if it's just in a dream. But, and I do understand this complaint, I've seen many say that Bender's Big Score actually ruins the impact of the original episode. I said I understand, I don't necessarily agree. In Bender's Big Score, thanks to the paradox-correcting timecode, a time paradox duplicate of Fry, who would later go by Lars, travels back to the year 2000 and actually continues Fry's life where he left off. And so, once these series of events fall into place, the events of the flashbacks in Jurassic Bark no longer happen. Fry returns on January 1st, pets Seymour, and the two actually spend some years together once again, which, similarly to my feeling on Game of Tones, is absolutely satisfying to see after how devastating the end of Jurassic Bark is. We even see how Seymour was fast fossilized, as the professor claimed in Jurassic Bark. But the big question is, does this actually negate the events we saw in Jurassic Park? Do those events no longer take place? Or were these simply alternate events that only happened because of the paradox correction aspect of the time code? I tried making a video about this very thing, and I'm pretty sure I got it all wrong, but honestly, I think in the end it sort of doesn't matter. The events of Seymour's tragic life played out on screen. We all saw it happen. Whether or not the events of Bender's Big Score changed the past or just forged an alternate timeline is kind of irrelevant. Because when I watch Jurassic Bark, when you watch Jurassic Bark, we still see Seymour wait for 12 years for Fry to return to him. Some form of Seymour waited for Fry. And while I might claim this episode can be emotionally manipulative, I'm also not sure that matters either, because it tapped into something that every viewer understood, something that collectively destroyed every one of us to the core of our beings. So much so that countless fans of Futurama either consider this to be the greatest television achievement of all time, or simply refuse to watch it ever again, because it hurts them that badly. And I think that no matter what type of criticism I could throw its way, nothing can change the impact that Jurassic Bark had on its viewers. Because whether or not we acknowledge this is fiction, whether or not we think the timeline changed to give Seymour a happier ending, whether or not we watch this episode regularly or never again, we all knew that Seymour was willing to sit there and wait for Fry, even if it takes forever. Folks, thanks for collectively crying with all of us. Huge shout out to my good friend Offbeat Kiki for the incredible cover of I Will Wait For You. Please go check out their channel. They do incredible music as well as top-notch video essays about cartoons and other media. Please do not be mad at me for making you cry about this dog again. And stay tuned because next year is going to be a big Futurama year. Can't believe that's something I can say. Peace.
Johnny!